Yeah, maybe we'll get right into it. Zechariah, and where people see Jesus in there, right? So we see like there's the branch, and the branch, obviously it's messianic, and Jesus, I don't know how we get this part, Jesus rising. I don't know if that's in there, but Joshua and Jesus, it's really the same name. What's going on there?
This is sad. This is really sad. I know it's a crazy way to start an interview, but my heart goes out to Christians because they do believe in the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, and they don't study Hebrew. So they're utterly reliant on weird translations that are very frequently corrupt. And even if a translation weren't corrupt, a translation is always a commentary, especially when translating two different families of language. In this case, um, Hebrew to English or Hebrew to Greek. It doesn't make a difference. It's a nightmare. All right, let's clear everything up. The Yehoshua found in Zechariah is a very popular fellow, but he's not Jesus. His name is Yehoshua. He could be Yeshua as well. That's a truncated name. It would be our equivalent of the name Joshua or Josh. And he was the high priest when the second temple was being built. There were two key figures who come from Babylon to the land of Israel to build the second temple during the, as it turns out, during that time was during the Persian Empire. So his name, the high priest, his name was Yehoshua. His father's name was Yehotzadok. Now that name Yehotzadok probably won't mean anything to most of the viewers. But Yehotzadok's older brother is very famous, and his name is Ezra, the author of quite a number of books in the Hebrew Bible, including the book that's named after him. Ezra Nehemiah technically is one book. It's been divided, but it's the same book. So it's Yehoshua ben Yehotzadok in Zechariah chapter 6, verse 11. But let's get really nutty, if we may. What's really nutty is that in the Septuagint, in Zechariah 6, verse 11, it is rendered as Isus, which means Jesus. I'm not kidding. So this Joshua, Yehoshua, here is translated as, not as Joshua in the Septuagint, but as Jesus. In fact, if you go to what's called if you don't read Greek, it's not a problem. You can actually open up an English translation of the Septuagint, and which is usually called the LXE. And you'll see it's Jesus there, but it's a different word for Yehoshua in Joshua chapter 1, verse 1, which is, of course, a very different person. So Yehoshua ben Yehotzadok is not the Jesus of Christianity. They lived about 500 years apart. The context, why is a crown being put on his head? So just so everyone know. So there's a problem that arises at the time. In fact, my name Tovia only appears in a couple of passages in the entire Bible. This is one of the chapters. What happens is men from Babylon bring money to Israel, kind of like what happens now is Jews from afar don't want to donate money to Israel, especially now because they're building the second temple. So the question came up, do we accept money from Brooklyn, Babylon, see? And the answer was yes, but they would take the gold and fashion into two crowns. One would go on Yehoshua ben Yehotzadok, and the other would go on the head of Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel was the partner. Zerubbabel literally means seated in Babylon. He was of the Davidic dynasty, but he was not a king. He was not a king. But he partnered with Yehoshua to build the second temple. So you have two people, Yehoshua, Ben Yosodis. It's not Jesus. But if you go to the Septuagint in Zechariah 6, verse 11, it's going to say Jesus. I'm not kidding. So it's totally not the same person. Moreover, if you look up verse 13, it says there that he'll build the temple. The priest will sit on one seat, and the person who will rule will be on his throne, and there will be a atzah shalom binehem. There will be a peace or a council of peace between them, which means they'll get along. That's all. Now, it's okay if someone wants to say that, look, Zerubbabel was not a king, but he was of Davidic dynasty, and the Messiah will be a descendant of him, which he will be, and this is a picture of the future. Now, if Christians want to do that and say that the one who will sit on his throne is not just Zerubbabel in his time, which is mentioned here in context, but it's also a picture of that in the far future, the Davidic dynasty will be preserved till the time of the Messiah. They get themselves into all kinds of problems. The problem, and this may seem a little sophisticated, it really isn't, is that if you look at 6:13, you see that the high priest, Yehoshua, and the one who's the ruler, they're two separate people. Why is this a problem? It's a massive problem because according to Hebrews, Jesus is the high priest as well as the king. You follow? But in Zechariah 6:13, you see that they're two separate people, and there will be v'atzah shalom tiyeh bein shnehem, and they'll get along, because sometimes the priest and the king didn't get along in Jewish history. The point is they get along. So therefore, the Septuagint just happens to render the Yehoshua ben Yehotzadok as Jesus. I'm not kidding. As Isus, that would be how you pronounce it in Greek. That's why people get themselves in tremendous trouble here.